Initiate transformation. Valvemax Megazord.
Okay, now we're gonna review the Valvemax or Velocimax Megazord set from Wave 1 of the RPM Micro Zord sets. You can see this is the Croc carrier carrying the tail spinner and Wolf Cruiser Zords. This is what they look like when they're not all together. Alright. Everything looks very simplistic compared to the original toy. Today I'm going to be comparing all of the Zords with their original counterparts. Should be noted that this comes with its own bonus Zord, which is a Cobra, and we'll talk more about that later. The first Zord is the tail spinner, which is originally a dolphin and a motorcycle, but in Power Rangers they're sort of saying it's a shark in merchandising. It looks a lot like the original with a few differences. For example, the cycle has only obviously one wheel in the micro version, whereas there's the presence of two wheels at the back section of the original. Also, the transformation is very simplistic. Like the original, all you have to do is turn it and you get your transformation with a Micro Zord. But in the original, I mean, you have to also fold up the wheel, unfold the wheel, and slap it on one side, and you'll reveal this peg hole. Here, the peg hole is on the wheel, so that begs the question of how it runs if the peg hole is actually on the wheel. Not a lot of paint differences, except you don't see the canopy. There's no like deep red or silver paint on top of it. It's missing the white eyebrows. It does not. It has some overpaint. Some section wasn't supposed to be painted was painted, and the section that looks sort of like a drill here, which is silver, is not silver in the Micro Zord version. However, the promotional materials before the Micro Zord was sold showed it as being painted. Of course, it's of note that you can see a small number 4 symbol there. This is actually the only Micro Zord with a symbol on it, albeit unpainted. The next Zord is the Wolf Cruiser, which is basically a police car and a German Shepherd in the original design concept, but it was changed to a wolf for merchandising purposes in Power Rangers RPM. There's a few differences. For example, the bottom section is flatter and lower than the original. This is actually in scale, it's longer than the original. The original is a little boxier. Also, the transformation, in the transformation you have, you just push it forward like that. You do basically the same thing here for the transformation sequence, but you move the peg over here. It's a little more forward than it should be. And, well, while you have the wheel here that you can remove and slap on top so it becomes a scope, you don't have that in the Wolf Cruiser Micro version, so unfortunately you won't be able to have a scope on your Wolf Cruiser. Paint apps, everything's basically there except for the white section here near the nose, but this is one of the most accurately painted Zords. Oh, I'm sorry, it's also missing silver on the wheels and in this section, but it's pretty close to the original paint job. This is the Croc carrier, and it's there's a lot of differences with the deluxe version. Basically, it's just one flat carrier, whereas in the original you've got a moving car. This one, it doesn't swivel. You've got flaps here, which you don't have in the Microzord version. You've got flaps here, you've got flaps here, but this whole thing is the same. Also, there's not a lot of paint differences, except for missing orange paint under here and on the shoulder section, and that orange stripe here with a symbol. It's basically the same, painted the same way. Oh, another thing I wanted to note is that while the original has the RPM or Go Under symbol just painted on, this one has it sculpted, but it's still one long piece. So there. Also of note is that this section is smaller in scale with the original design, while this one is pretty big. This section, it's the first thing that's gonna get to you when you get these things. You see two pegs here, and you're not gonna know what they're for unless, well, you're not gonna be able to use them anyway unless you get a high Octane Megazord. Those will come in handy when you use the sets together. Oh, it's also missing some green paint here, but no biggie. If you love small Zord sets and you collected your Power Rangers RPM figures, then you would realize another purpose for this Croc carrier. Each Ranger figure had a small version of their Zords. In the show, the Zords manifested in front of the Rangers whenever they needed them. So you've got Zords, mini Zord versions for every Zord except for the carrier Zord. There's none for that. But what's cool about this is you can put your Zord figures on here. They can actually work together. So this is one of the coolest things I like about the carrier Zord. It can be an actual carrier Zord for your your mini RPM Zords.
We're on the scene!
To transform the set, it's actually easier than the Japanese version because everything's been simplified. Although the transformation's a little more complicated than High Octane, but still simpler than the deluxe version. In the deluxe version, you had to separate the two cabs, flip, and then reattach. But astonishingly, they actually made it easier here. All you have to do is twist the waist section, flip the head, flip the legs, split apart. The only hinges that appear in this Zord would be the hinge. Next thing you do is you remove the shoulder parts and go on to the other hole. Snap it into place like that. You'll note now that Valvemax is missing some paint in the head area. It's simple silver, red, and gold there. It's also missing that golden V. Everything else is simple. As earlier stated, all you have to do is turn the fish around, snap the peg on there, unsnap this, and resnap it on the lower pegs, and put it on there. Now what I personally prefer to do is just to leave the Wolf Cruiser as is, because it just looks more proportioned. And there it is, your Valvemax Megazord. As mentioned earlier in the high octane review, this is like basically 1/3 or 1/4 of the original Megazord, and you're missing the scope from the original toy. Hands are a little longer because you've got these extra wheels here which are not present in the original, but overall I think it looks pretty good. It looks pretty accurate considering. The Valvemax Micro Megazord is maybe a head and a half smaller than the RPM figures. But if you manage to snag the high octane Megazord and slap them together, then it's going to start getting taller. And if you get the figures from Wave 2, you're gonna get even bigger Megazords from that.
The RPM Micro Megazords may look tiny, but they pack a big alien-busting punch. You can morph them again, and again, and again, into enough power to totally destroy evil. Alien-busting RPM Micro Megazord sets, only from Bandai.